confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you really well.
I hope you're doing well and having a great day so far. Thank you so much for making yourself available for this meeting. I really appreciate it. So, regarding this meeting, it will be in interview format and will take approximately 20 to 25 minutes. I hope it's okay with you.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. So, the purpose of this interview is to gather data from professionals like yourself and then to analyze it with a view to publishing the results in a form of a book, which may be named as 10 Lessons from 100 Interviews. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds really good.
thanks. So I will share my screen as and when required, and please consider that the questions that are asked, they will be on behalf of my age group, which is around 11 to 13 years old. So do you have any questions before we begin?
No, go ahead.
So here's the agenda for today. It is mainly spread into three sections. In the first section, there will be a set of questions, followed by a personality check in the middle, which is a fun activity and something for you to take away. And lastly, some suggestion and advice questions from you. So I hope you're as excited as I am. So let's begin. So
Okay.
just to begin with, could you please briefly describe what your role is professionally?
Well, I stopped working 3 years ago. So right now I'm retired. But what I
So
used to
yes,
do, hmm?
what was your job before?
So my job before, I was the network manager for all of Hewlett Packard's data center network infrastructure. So what that means is Hewlett Packard has about 35, or back then had 35 data centers worldwide. And my job was to make sure that they always had um, an up-to-date and reliable network switching and routing infrastructure for use by clients. And each data center had, by clients, clients are big companies like the NHS or General Motors or GlaxoSmithKline or big companies like that. And they store their data in a data center and then they have to access it millions of times a day. And my job was to make sure we always had a good, strong, robust infrastructure in each data center with switches and routers. And specifically, my area was more the financial management. It was about a $40 million a year budget.
Wow, cool.
So I
Seems
get into the number side of things.
cool. So do you like maths?
Yep, I love math.
Me too. Because it
Good.
makes sense because you're doing stuff with numbers. Thank you. So did you like your job?
Certain aspects of it I really enjoyed. There was a lot of financial analysis, so I could do financial analysis for 4 or 5 hours
Oh,
at
wow.
one time, nonstop. Just spreadsheets and figuring investments and trying to minimize our spend while still getting all the equipment we needed. Some of the equipment we would buy, just one switch in a data center might cost $200,000. And
Wow.
so it was important to make sure you bought it at the right time and and the right size, not too big. So those aspects of the job I enjoyed. Some of the aspects I didn't enjoy. In a big corporation, you always have people who have their own agenda,
Mm,
meaning they have personal reasons why they want to do certain things. And so you get into all kinds of relationships with people on trying to get your stuff done, and they're either going to help you and support you or they're going to withhold information and make your job difficult for
So yeah,
whatever reason.
one will help, one will not help. They'll just make it worse.
So overall, I probably enjoyed doing, I'd have to say less than half of what I did.
Cool, nice, thanks. So moving on from that, I'm very interested to know which hobbies you enjoy. Are there any in particular?
Yeah, my favorite hobby is woodworking. I love to make things out of wood, and I've done it for the last, well, ever since I was about 19, 20 years old, I've done woodworking. So some of the furniture in my house is things I've made,
Oh,
and it's really interesting. And
so
I feel like I'm in my element when I'm doing things with wood because you can create and then you've got something that lasts a long time.
definitely. Cool. I'll try that. Woodworking. Thanks. I think that's a very interesting hobby. No one said anything to do like that. Only things that I know of. It's just that um, another Toastmaster I did yesterday. Um, it was snowboarding, which I hadn't heard of. But then there's another one, wood making.
Oh, working with wood is fun.
Hmm.
And I do sports too. I used to be a long distance runner, but I've gotten a lot of injuries. So now I'm trying to get back into being able to run 4 or 5 miles without stopping. But I've run a lot of marathons.
Okay.
Do you know how long a marathon is?
No,
26 miles.
that's a lot. Oh,
Yeah, it takes a little while.
yeah, 4 hours.
But it's good fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So now moving on to the next question. Do you have a soft skill that you've gained and you're very glad to have gained?
Yes, a soft skill. I would say that public speaking,
Mhm.
talking in front of a group is one of the soft skills that, well, it's one of the few soft skills that I've worked on in the last 5 years. And my only regret is I should have started 20 years earlier
Someone
because
else said that. They
did
should have.
they?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a skill that a person can have for life, and once you develop it, it's kind of like riding a bike. Do you have a bicycle? Do you ride a
Yeah.
bike?
Mhm.
Okay. So once you learn how to balance and ride a bike, then you just get better at it and you never forget how to do it.
Yeah, like
And
when you start riding it, you have like stabilizers. Then slowly you take one stabilizer out, second stabilizer. Then you do no. Then you do have a bigger bike, faster. Yeah. Then you get the hang of it. You know how to do it.
yep,
Sometimes you might fall down, but still it won't. You won't fall down as much as you were when you are learning. So it's like if you're at the high level.
yep.
Nice.
And because speaking is so different, there's always new things to learn. And your dad
Mhm.
can tell you all about that.
Definitely. Nice. So now moving on, but this skill is still based on the first skill. This question is based on the first question, skills. So, is there a skill that you really wished you had?
A skill I really wished I had, but I don't have.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I do a lot of do-it-yourself stuff around the house, not just with wood, but laying tile and painting and all of that. Um, Probably in terms of knowledge, it's not really a skill, but in terms of knowledge, I've always felt like I should have gone back to school and studied being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
It just
Um,
intrigues me. I had one class at university where we studied law, business law, and I found it really interesting, but I never pursued law.
I understand. It feels like it. Cool. So, is there anything particularly you liked? Like you said, lawyer. Is there anything else, maybe?
Uh, Skills I wish I had. Uh, I wish I could cook better. I'm a pretty good cook. I've had to cook ever since when my mother went to work when I was 11, then each of us 6 kids had to take our turn once a week cooking in the kitchen, cooking dinner for the whole family of 8 of us, except for my little brother because he was too small. He was only 6. We weren't going to let him cook anything. He'd probably burn the house down. But the other 5 of us, we had to cook. And cooking is a neat skill. I wish I was a lot better at it. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, I think I still cook a lot of the ways my mother did, but it would be good to learn new things, different ways of cooking.
Yeah.
And my son does that because he looks at a lot of YouTube stuff or the foodie show and comes up with novel flavors and things, whereas I tend to make things that I used to make a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
cooking.
So I think it's like a life skill cooking because it's like something it's necessary for you to know. So, mm,
It is, and it's funny because my son went to uni and he had 4 roommates, and 2 of the guys could cook really well, and 2 of them wouldn't cook at all. So their dinners consisted of takeaway things from like Marks and Spencer
mhm.
or pot noodles, and that's all they ate. And boy, because they
Wow.
couldn't cook, so they were just missing that whole
Yeah,
the whole
definitely.
benefit of being able to cook and eat good food.
Hmm.
Do you cook?
Well, sometimes I know how to cook a few things, but not many. Like I know how to make pasta, and I know how to make pancakes, but I'm still trying.
Okay, well, it's a good start.
Mm. So, moving on from skill questions to advice questions, have you been given a piece of advice that you've been given and you're very glad to have followed it?
Yes. I had a couple of good managers when I worked. I had several bad managers, but one of my good managers, who's no longer with us, when I worked in the US, I wasn't getting some things done, and his advice to me was, Tom, you need to deal with what falls in your lap.
Mm-hmm.
So in a job, you typically have a job description, and but things happen in work, just like every day, on the playground or at school or whatever you're doing. And things happen that are outside of your control, but you need to deal with what comes your way. You need to just deal with what falls in your lap. And that was such good advice because it showed me, you can't ignore these things. You can't say, well, it's not my job. You just
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with it, whatever it is.
Yeah, so you have to deal with the things that come your way. Some things you can't deal with, so don't get sad. And the things that you can deal with, try changing it up maybe.
Yep. Or find somebody that can help.
Hmm, makes sense. I think that's a very good one.
So that piece of advice I'll always remember.
Definitely. Makes sense because anything that comes to you, you can go like, how should I handle it? Should I handle it or should I leave it? Like that.
Right. And a lot of people, they take a really narrow view and say, well, that's not my responsibility. I'm not going to deal with it. Whatever it is, even if it's litter on the sidewalk in front of your house and you didn't put it there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's there. Do you ignore it or do you deal with it?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So deal with the things that come in your way.
Yep,
Don't just go like, oh, it's not mine. I don't do it.
right. It's part of being a responsible person, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So now we'll move on to the next question, which is there a piece of advice that you've been given but you really wish to had followed?
Piece of advice I've been given that I wish I had followed, but obviously I didn't.
Yep.
Uh, well, there's things financially that I wish I had done, but I don't think they were based on anybody else giving me the advice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, good piece of advice that I wish I had followed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any?
I can't think of anything right now. Maybe it's because if I didn't do something I should have done, I don't want to feel bad about it for a long time. So I sort of forget about it and I put it over there in my mind
And then
and
it just
and
gets
then I don't remember it because I don't like to remember negative things.
definitely. Cool. Thank you. So
Uh,
then,
I'll think, and if I think of something, I'll come back.
mhm, sure. Okay. So now, just before we move on to the second section, the personality check, could you please try to describe yourself with 3 words?
3 words.
Yes, please.
Uh, Confident,
Mm-hmm.
practical, and positive.
So, could you please explain why you use these words?
Confidence because I'm always confident in my abilities. I think about what I'm going to do or what I need to do, whether it's something physical or reading, but I've always been very confident in my abilities. I've had good schooling and even in school, I was always confident I could get A's, I could score 99 on tests
So, you just did it.
and so I was always confident. And then practical, I always look at whether doing something makes sense.
Uh huh.
So people might say, well, I want to paint that wall black. Well, that's not very practical for a lot of reasons. So you wouldn't do that. Or um, I always look at the practical side of things. If you're going to do something, how is it useful? How does it affect you? And I think practical just means using uh,
Mm-hmm.
common sense or making sure things fit together. Like something that would not be very practical would be putting a pool table in the living room. Well, some people might do that.
Yeah,
Or getting a sofa and chair combination that's way too big for a small room. That's not
mm-hmm.
very practical. So I always look at that side of things, what's practical. And then, what was the other one? Confident, practical, and positive. Positive mental attitude is a key thing in life. The cup is always, have you ever heard the phrase, the cup is half full or it's half empty? Well, the
Yeah.
cup half full means that you have a positive mental attitude. And that's so important to achieving anything and everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
I've always been very positive. I don't dwell on the negative, and I try to forget the negative things, I put those way back in the subconscious of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
positive is good. You know, you hear people talking and complaining about things. People complain about how hot it was last week. People will complain about the fact that we're in lockdown.
Mm-hmm. So
Well, you always have to look at the positive side of things.
definitely. So go with the positive side. Don't go for the negative. Like, let's say it was raining a few minutes ago, and then two people go and say, "Wow, look at how lovely the weather is," and then the other person goes like, "Yes, but we can't go out. It's raining. It's dull." So always try being positive, nice, like that.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you. So now we have finished the first section of this interview, the questions, and we will move on to the second section, the personality check. And if you ask me, it is probably the most fun part in this whole interview. So,
Okay.
lights. Can you see the slides?
Yes,
Yeah.
the little picture.
Mm. So this is the personality check, and we'll do it. So, can you please put the following 5 animals in the order of your preference?
Okay. Oh, you want me to name it?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, cow. I saw one yesterday.
Ooh.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
pig second, mainly because they're both barnyard animals and they're good food too. And then the sheep, same reason. And then probably the tiger, just because it's cute. Who is that? That's Simba. And the horse last. I've ridden a horse a couple of times, but I don't see much use for horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now this, as I said, this is the personality check. So it tells you what your personality is, so how
Okay.
you respond to each question. Yeah. So we will move on to the next one to find out what each one means. So each one symbolizes something. So we will move on to the next. So because you said cow first, your first priority was your job, then money, then love, then pride, and then family.
Oh,
Just
okay.
yeah. So and then now you'll move on to the next one. So can you please share a word with me that you would use to describe each one of the following?
Okay. Well, a dog is usually friendly. A
Mm-hmm.
cat is cuddly. I have a pet cat. He's my buddy. A rat is disgusting because they're dirty and they eat all kinds of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And the sea is
Yeah,
represents openness.
thank you. So each one of these now describes a personality. So like the dog, the cat, the rat, and the sea. Each one of them describes a personality. So we'll move on to the next slide to find out what each one means. So because you said the dog was friendly, you are friendly, your partner's cuddly, your enemy is disgusting, and your life is open.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for all your answers. We have now finished this section, and we will move on to the third section, which is the suggestion and advice section. So, from your personal experience, if you were to give a piece of advice to children, what advice do you think you should give to them that they should follow?
Hmm. Well, one piece of advice is stay in school and get all the education you can get. definitely go to university. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't mind studying and you don't know what you want to do when you graduate, then go to graduate school,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I did. And that helped a lot because nobody knows what they want to do when they're 15 years old, 18 years old. Even when I was 21, you don't really know what you want to do in life. I mean, you're going to have your whole life, 40 years to work and stuff.
Oh,
And it takes time to figure out what you want to do. But my best advice I can give somebody who's young is stay in school and get an education,
and you
and
go to
definitely go to university,
and
because
then you build.
university is one third study, another third social, and the other third is really figuring out yourself as an individual and what you want to do in life.
Mm-hmm.
But the social life in university is fantastic. It'll get back to where people can socialize normally again in a couple of years.
Yeah,
But don't miss out on university.
definitely. So you should always try. No. So I understood not to get. So go to university. You'll find out what you want to be. You'll be more social, like that. Good. Thank you. So now, following on, is there a piece of advice that you should give to children that they shouldn't do?
That they shouldn't do.
Yes, please.
Something that children should not do. Well, there's a lot of things they should do. Listen to your parents and don't do anything illegal. Maybe that's it. Don't do anything illegal.
Can you please give
Maybe
examples?
the better thing would be don't do anything that you know you'll be sorry that you did later on.
Yeah. So you
So,
shouldn't
for
do anything that.
example, if if you hit a kid in school, uh, unless they were really horrible and the bully of the school, you'd probably be sorry you hit the kid. Or doing something you know you shouldn't do, either because your parents told you shouldn't do it or because it's not really legal. Those are the things you shouldn't do.
So you shouldn't do anything that will get you into trouble later on. Good.
Right.
Now, thank you for all your answers. We have now completed the third section of this interview. So, if you want, should I ask you some bonus questions as well?
Okay.
Cool. So, have you done something before that had got you into trouble?
What's your
So,
question again?
have you done something before that had got you into trouble?
Oh, yeah.
So, can you please tell me, please, if you don't mind?
Something I did that got me into trouble. Um, Something I can actually tell you. I did a lot of things before I went to university. I probably did a lot of things that got me into trouble. Um, hmm, let's pick a big one. A big one. Let's think.
Anything really?
Well, one of the things I did when I was 18 was bunch of us worked at McDonald's, and so we had an outing one day at a local at the state park, about 30-minute drive from our homes. And I made the mistake of bringing some beer. So I was 18 and the legal age for beer was 21.
Oh,
But I brought some anyway, and then there were park rangers there, because this was a pretty populated park. Big place, but and as soon as somebody opened a beer, the rangers came in, four of them, and they took away all of our beer and told us to go home. And there were probably 20 of us. And so our whole day's party was ruined.
20.
That's something. And now I was 18 and I still remember that. That was something I should not have done.
Well, you got here and then 20 of you went back. Wow, that's a lot.
So can't get away with things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. So now moving on to the second bonus question. Could you please share a word with me that you would use to describe my dad with?
Uh, well, the first word that comes to my mind actually is upbeat. Your father is very upbeat. He's very positive.
Mm-hmm.
In his voice, he's always enthusiastic and very positive. So that type of attitude, I call it upbeat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that's very good to hear. Now, moving on to the third bonus question, which is the last one. So, can you please tell me something that you did? You think you should have got into trouble for it, but you didn't,
Hmm. Something I did that I should have gotten in trouble for.
but you didn't.
Uh, all these things go back to when I was between the age of 14 and 18. I wasn't an angel back then. um, what did I do back then?
Anything?
Oh, there's something. When I was little, I was probably your age or even younger.
Mm-hmm.
It was winter. Where I lived, we had a lot of snow. And so one of the things I did is I made some snowballs and then I put them in the freezer. Well, then I got them out later, and my brother and I were sort of fighting. We didn't get along real well all the time. We do now. And so it was winter and there was snow outside, but I went back in the house and I got my solid as a rock frozen snowballs. And I decided those were the snowballs I was going to throw at him. And so I did. And I hit him right here, right above the eye. And it opened up a big cut and he had a bunch of blood coming.
Oh,
And he ran into the house crying. And my mom went and found him and said, "What happened?" And he hit me with a snowball. But I didn't tell him that it was a frozen
oh,
solid as a rock
yeah.
snowball. And I felt really bad about it. And I still remember, and this is
Oh,
50 years later, I still remember standing there watching my mother um, with a washcloth patting away at the blood. I think he had to go to the hospital and get stitches even,
um,
and
ah,
patting away at the blood. But she never
thank
yelled at me, and I was expecting to get yelled at.
you. Okay. So, thank you for all your answers. We have now completed the third section of this interview. So, just to conclude, could I please request you one thing that you have liked about this interview?
I think what I've liked the most is your method has been really good. You go right through, boom, boom, boom. And in particular, one of the things you've done really well is when I've made a statement, said something, you've listened well because I could tell because you gave me feedback on what I said.
Mhm.
And if that's a skill you're learning already at this age, you keep it up and you will do fantastic because that's called like a reflexive behavior. And it means you're listening well and you understand the person who's talking to you. And it's just you're much more connected.
Mhm. Definitely.
So I'm impressed. You've done an excellent job.
Thank you. And just for the scope of improvement, if I had to change something, what do you think it should be?
On your interview process,
Yeah.
um, Well, I gave you examples from my childhood, but maybe you would want to ask for examples of adult life, because
Hmm.
I did give you two or three examples of things that I did when I was bad when I was a teenager.
Hmm.
But it might be more relevant for what you're doing to have examples of things from later on in life.
Yeah, sure, I'll do it. So thank you
But I
for
but I couldn't think of any. Um,
thank you. Thank you for the feedback and all your time today. And just as a token of appreciation, I would like to present you with this certificate for taking part in my interview project.
oh wow. Well, thank you.
Welcome.
That's
So
really
here,
neat. You've really got an awesome process here.
thank you. I will email it to you, and otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I
Thank
hope I
you.
can